The grand hall shimmered under golden lights, filled with laughter, music, and the faint scent of roses. Every corner was decorated with photos of Martha's 40 years as a nurse, pictures of smiling patients, newborns she'd delivered, and countless colleagues who admired her unwavering heart. It was supposed to be her night, a celebration of sacrifice, dedication, and resilience. Her son, David, had planned everything. "You deserve this, Mom," he'd said proudly. His wife, Emily, was in charge of the decorations and catering, ensuring every detail was perfect. The crystal glasses, the layered cake, the elegant white orchids on each table. To everyone, Emily looked like the picture of a loving daughter-in-law. To Martha, however, something about her smile always felt rehearsed. Martha stood at the center of it all, radiant in her soft blue dress, accepting hugs and gifts. To Martha, an old colleague toasted, the woman who gave her life to others. Cheers erupted, champagne glasses clinked, and for a brief moment her heart swelled with joy. She had worked hard all her life, now she could finally rest. But then a flicker of unease. Martha's sharp nurse's eyes caught Emily whispering something to David near the drink table. He nodded slightly, avoiding eye contact. Emily's hand trembled as she poured a golden stream of champagne into 2 flutes. Then she smiled too quickly and turned toward Martha. "Here you go, Mom," Emily said sweetly, handing her the glass. "A toast to your new beginning." Martha smiled back, but deep inside, a chill ran through her. Years of experience had taught her that sometimes danger comes wrapped in politeness. Emily's tone was too smooth, her gaze too fixed, and when the light hit the glass, Martha thought she saw a faint swirl, something dissolving. Her heart skipped a beat. No, that can't be. Maybe I'm just tired. Still, her instincts whispered otherwise. She remembered every patient she had ever saved because she had trusted her intuition. So, when Emily turned away for a moment to greet a guest, Martha's fingers moved subtly, switching their glasses. The one Emily had handed her now stood at Emily's place, and the fresh one, untouched, rested in front of her. Emily returned moments later, lifting her glass with a wide smile. To a happy retirement, she cheered. Martha met her eyes and raised her own glass, the faintest trace of sadness behind her polite smile. "Yes," she said softly, "to new beginnings." As the music swelled again and everyone drank, Martha took only a small sip. Across the table, Emily drank deeply. The celebration continued, but the warmth in Martha's chest had been replaced by something colder: suspicion, confusion, and the first spark of fear. Something was wrong tonight, terribly wrong. And before the night was over, that fear would prove justified. The night glittered with joy and laughter, but Martha felt every second stretch like glass. About to crack, around her, people danced, music floated through the air, and the smell of expensive food lingered, yet her eyes stayed locked on Emily. Her daughter-in-law was radiant, laughing at jokes, greeting guests, holding David's hand as though she were the perfect wife. But behind that smile, Martha sensed darkness. The image of the powder dissolving in the champagne haunted her mind. Every nerve in her body screamed caution. Emily glanced at Martha across the table and smiled sweetly, lifting her glass again. "You barely drank anything, Mom," she said playfully. "Come on, it's your night." Martha returned the smile, calm and composed. "Oh, I'm just pacing myself, dear. We have a long evening ahead." David laughed, oblivious. That's my mom, always careful, even at her own party. But within minutes, something changed. Emily's face began to pale. The laughter around the table faded as she blinked several times, trying to steady herself. "It's hot in here," she murmured, loosening the scarf around her neck. Martha's heart pounded. David reached for her hand. "Emily, are you all right?" Emily's eyes fluttered. I feel dizzy." Her words slurred before her body went limp. The glass slipped from her fingers, shattering across the table, splashing champagne everywhere. Gasps filled the hall. "Call an ambulance," someone shouted. Chaos erupted. David knelt beside his wife, panicked. "Emily, Emily, wake up." Martha stood frozen, her eyes fixed on the overturned glass. The same one Emily had given her earlier. Around her, guests rushed in confusion, but Martha's mind was quiet, methodical. The medical training in her years as a nurse kicked in. She checked Emily's pulse, weak but steady. Her pupils were slow to respond. A familiar symptom. Zolpidem, Martha thought instantly, a heavy sedative. Enough to knock someone unconscious within minutes. David looked up at her, his face pale. "Mom, what's happening? What's wrong with her?" Martha held his gaze, her voice steady but cold. "I don't know yet, but I think we need to have some serious questions answered later." The ambulance arrived swiftly. As they carried Emily away, Martha sat quietly in the back seat beside her, her thoughts spinning. Who would do this? Why, and why tonight at her retirement celebration? When they reached the hospital, tests confirmed her suspicions. Traces of sedatives in Emily's bloodstream. The dose wasn't lethal, but it was deliberate. A doctor, one of Martha's old colleagues, gave her a knowing look. "This wasn't an accident, Martha. Someone tried to drug her." Martha nodded slowly, her fingers tightening around her handbag. She didn't explain. She didn't have to, because deep inside she already knew who that someone was supposed to be. Later, sitting alone in the dim hospital corridor, she looked down at her hands still trembling slightly and whispered to herself, "You thought you could fool me, Emily, but you chose the wrong woman." The game had changed. The predator had become the prey. And for the first time that night, Martha allowed herself a quiet, bitter smile. The hospital room was quiet except for the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor. Emily lay still, pale and fragile against the white sheets. David sat at her bedside, his head in his hands, muttering prayers under his breath. Martha stood near the window, her silhouette framed by the cold morning light. She hadn't slept. The events of the night replayed in her mind again and again, Emily's trembling hands, that faint shimmer in the drink, the fall, the chaos. None of it made sense unless it wasn't meant to. When a nurse entered with Emily's test results, she looked uneasy. "Mrs. Miller," she said carefully, "the lab found traces of zolpidem. It's a controlled sedative. The dosage was too high for medical use." David looked up sharply. "What are you saying? Someone drugged my wife?" Martha's eyes didn't leave Emily's face. "Yes," she said softly. "Someone did, but deep down she knew exactly who that someone had been meant for." Over the next few days, while David focused on his wife's recovery, Martha began her own quiet investigation. Years as a nurse had taught her to be observant, patient, and meticulous, and now those instincts guided her like old friends. She visited her bank first. The clerk frowned at his screen. "Mrs. Miller, I'm afraid there were some unusual attempts to access your retirement account last week. Several online transfers were denied due to incorrect verification." Martha's blood ran cold. "Who tried to access it?" He hesitated. The name linked to the attempts was Emily Miller. Her knees nearly gave out. Emily, the same woman who'd smiled in her face, hugged her for photos, planned her retirement party, had been plotting to steal the very money Martha had saved for her peaceful old age. Later that day, she visited her lawyer. The papers he pulled out confirmed her worst fear. A set of power of attorney documents filed a month earlier with David's signature. He gave her permission to handle your financial matters. The lawyer said, "Were you aware of this?" "No," Martha whispered. "My son, he'd never." But her voice cracked before she could finish. The puzzle pieces clicked painfully into place. Emily had planned everything. The retirement party wasn't a celebration. It was a setup. A drugged drink, a forged signature, and a transfer of funds that would have gone unnoticed until it was too late. Tears blurred Martha's vision as she walked home that evening. The betrayal cut deeper than she imagined. It wasn't just about money, it was about love twisted into deceit, family turned into strangers. That night, she sat alone in her living room, surrounded by framed photos of happier times. David as a boy with missing teeth, Emily smiling on their wedding day, her late husband's gentle eyes frozen in an old portrait. She spoke softly into the silence. "You raised him to be kind, George, but you didn't see what I see now." For the first time in years, anger burned through her calm. Not the kind that lashes out blindly, but the kind that sharpens, that waits, that plans. Martha wiped her tears and straightened her shoulders. "You tried to take my life and my peace, Emily," she murmured, "but I'm not the fragile woman you think I am. You'll learn what happens when you betray a woman who's already survived everything." In the faint reflection of the window, she saw her own eyes no longer sad, but steady, determined. The betrayal had been uncovered. The next step would be justice. Weeks passed since the disastrous party, and the world around Martha had changed. The whispers in town had quieted, but inside her home, silence still carried the weight of betrayal. David visited often, his eyes hollow with guilt, while Emily remained under investigation, her once perfect reputation crumbling under scrutiny. Martha had waited not out of fear, but patience. She wanted every truth to surface, every lie to collapse on its own. And when the time came, she moved carefully, just as she always had during her years as a nurse. Precise, calm, and in control. She began by gathering evidence. The hospital report confirmed the sedative in Emily's system. The restaurant's security footage showed the moment Emily poured something into Martha's glass. Her bank provided digital logs of attempted transfers. Piece by piece, Martha built her quiet fortress of proof, not out of revenge, but out of righteousness. When the detective finally came to her home, Martha handed over a neatly organized folder. "I'm not here to destroy anyone's life," she said softly, "but I won't allow mine to be taken." Within days, Emily was arrested. The charges: attempted fraud, forgery, and administering a harmful substance. David stood by in disbelief as the officers led his wife away. "Mom," he whispered, tears filling his eyes. How could she do this? Martha looked at her son, her heart heavy yet resolute. "Sometimes evil hides behind a familiar face. I tried to warn you, David, but love makes us blind until pain opens our eyes." The trial that followed was brief. Emily's guilt was undeniable, her fingerprints on the forged documents, her messages arranging the transfers, the drug found in her purse. She wept in the courtroom, begging Martha to withdraw the complaint. But Martha, dignified and composed, simply said, "Forgiveness is not the same as forgetting." When the verdict came, 5 years in prison, Martha didn't celebrate. She only closed her eyes and exhaled. It wasn't triumph she felt, it was release. But Martha's story didn't end with punishment. Her revenge was never about destruction. It was about rebuilding. She used the very retirement money Emily tried to steal to open a small care home for elderly women abandoned or mistreated by their families. She named it Grace Haven. There she found purpose again. The laughter of her residents filled her days, their gratitude reminding her that kindness could be both a shield and a sword. One evening, David visited her, holding a small bouquet of lilies, her favorite. "Mom," he said quietly, "I've filed for divorce. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want to make things right." Martha looked at him, her expression soft but firm. "You don't owe me words, David. You owe yourself truth. Learn from this. Not everyone who calls you family loves you." He nodded, eyes glistening. "You're still my mother. I'll always be your son." That night, as Martha stood by the window of Grace Haven, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in gold and crimson. She thought of Emily somewhere behind cold prison walls and felt no hatred, only clarity. Revenge doesn't always roar, she whispered. Sometimes it smiles quietly and walks away. For the first time since that terrible night, Martha felt free. Her heart, though scarred, beat with peace. The betrayal had been her breaking point, but also her rebirth. And in the silence that followed, she smiled not for what she lost, but for the strength she gained through it all.